Welcome back to Hurdle the Line. I am your host, Fletch, and joined with me this week is two absolute wonders in Sam and Karl. Sam is experiencing a couple of tiny little technical difficulties to start us off, so we'll hopefully be back with him in a second. Karl, get us going. How are you, sir?
All good, mate. All good. My team still continuously sucks, but that is part and parcel of being a Patriots fan in the modern day. Apart from that, doing really, really well. And hope you're all well. And well done to your Detroit Lions. What an absolute barnstorm of a game it was on Monday night. I really enjoyed that.
I'm sure a lot of people said they did. I can't speak to that as just one of them. When you have a game like that, it's almost impossible to truly enjoy as a fan when you're that invested in it. But I am sure I can see why everybody else did enjoy it. It's just one of those. And in fact, while we wait for Sam, let's get that going. Let's go, because the review team did get a little bit of a look in at this week's games. Did give us a little bit of Monday Night Football, but I'll let you start us off with how you felt about these games. We'll start off with the one that nobody liked, the Titans-Dolphins. First, initial thoughts on that game. Did you get much of it in? I know it was kind of the less great game, shall we say.
I was watching the second half of the game due to fantasy football implications in a main league that I am in. But overall, that was horrendous. I will say this about Miami's offense. It is primarily and only can be ran by Tua Tagovailoa. It just reminds me so much of when Andrew Luck was with the Indianapolis Colts. They built an offense entirely suited around him. But when he kept having these injuries and they had a backup quarterback come in, they just didn't click. It just didn't get going. And I think the Dolphins are now suffering the same. They're suffering the same sort of issues. You know, Skylar Thompson not really going to lead you anywhere. Tyron Huntley or Snoop Huntley or whatever the hell you want to call him didn't really do much, if I'm honest with you. And I think I said something in week 3's preview, I believe, mate, and that was the fact that if the Tennessee Titans had Mason Rudolph starting, they would have been 2-0 by then, which is in week 3. What happened? He came in when Will Levis went down with a shoulder injury, and guess what? Yeah. He led them to a victory. And Rudolph actually managed to run that offense pretty well, if I'm going to be honest. But if you're a Dolphins fan, you have got to be worried because Tua apparently is scheduled to return in week 8. They really can't afford any more losses on their slate because getting into playoffs is going to get harder and harder. And there isn't many tomato cans that Miami have a chance of facing. They've got some big teams they've got to play at some point. And they could be very close to having a 500 record if they don't pick up these wins ASAP. Yeah. Fortunately, they actually have a very winnable game this coming Sunday, which we'll get into later on. But fair play to Tennessee. They finally got off the pile. They finally got a win. They needed a win.
Yeah.
We'll see if that was just a fluke, or we'll see if they can continue that run. But one thing's certain: if Mason Rudolph continues to lead the offense and wins games, what does that then say regarding of Will Levis? Yeah. It doesn't look. It's not a good look, does it?
No, it really, really isn't. Let's go back here. Sorry. I obviously did not watch very much of this game and managed to get a good chunk of the first half in, but then a slightly more important game on my schedule came up and kind of kept him with the top left-hand corner. It wasn't a great game. It really, really wasn't. Looking as gorgeous as ever, Sam is fully with us at the moment, it looks like, for the time being. Sam, how are you, mate? Let's get us going.
Yeah, good. Just slowly recovering from that poor defensive display against the Bears, but is what it is.
The amount of games that you have to deal with in general being an NFL, but you just have a look back and go, is what it is. But with that in mind, did you get much of the Titans Dolphins in, even in just highlights, Sam?
No, I didn't manage to watch any of it. I didn't, to be honest, after watching us the way that we played on the defensive side, and obviously the offense sort of was already banged up, I kind of didn't want to watch any more football that week, so kind of didn't bother looking. But I kept an eye on the scores and that. So to be honest, it was never a game that was going to appeal to me with Tua being out, and the fact that they weren't. We'd already seen what Skylar Thompson and what Mike Boyle had done the week before, and I didn't think that Huntley was going to be any better, and he clearly wasn't. And like I say, there was more interest in the Lions game against Seattle, watching Kenneth Walker do a little flippity flip.
So let's have a little chat about that game then. I am going to. I know once I get started on this game, I won't stop. So I'm going to throw out to Sam. I'm going to throw it straight to you first because this had divisional implications for you. This game. What did you get of the game? What did you make of it? What did you think?
To be honest, I'm trying to. I think it goes back to what we were saying before about when we talked about last week about there being pretenders and the real deal in terms of those teams that were 3-0, and this sort of showed the Seahawks limitations, I suppose is probably the best word, isn't it? They've still played well. They still put up 29 points against a team that are arguably one of the two teams expected to be in that NFC Championship. So I think they played well. Mm-hmm. I mean, they put up 516 yards of offense, which, to put up that much and to still lose is pretty unfortunate. But when you've got Dan Campbell's team who can decide that they're going to have a wide receiver who is apparently, I didn't realise, your QB3, throwing to your QB1 for a touchdown. It's like, what can you actually ask of Seattle to try and deal with? So, I think it was just one of those games. It probably brought a lot of Seahawks fans back to reality in terms of where they're at. I don't think any of them would have expected them to be 3-1 after 4 games anyway.
No.
Well, possibly they did, based upon the teams they were playing, but I don't think that there's, this season is very much kind of a, let's see what our offense can do with a new head coach. Let's see what our team can do with a new head coach, given the fact that they are moving on from the Pete Carroll era. So I think they'll just be happy that they were able to put up a fight against the Lions, really.
Yeah. Karl, similar thoughts?
Yeah, similar thoughts. Similar thoughts indeed. Seattle did put up a valiant effort, I will say that. But when you're going up against the Detroit Lions offense, you have got to knuckle down on the defensive side of the ball. And the Seahawks did lose a few pieces on their front seven as well during the game as well, which is a bit of a detriment to how the game panned out. But we know Detroit can put 40 points on any team. They've got the offense to do it. They've got the firepower to do it. What I would throw with a little bit of a caution with is, I would probably say Dan Campbell. I know he loves playing this real aggressive type of offense. He loves doing this. Mm-hmm. But there will come a time at some point where he will have to start having a more of a cautious, more conservative approach. When you've got a big enough lead, then you need to try and say to your defense, right, okay, now you need a 3 and out. Now you need a 3 and out. You don't want the game to, as you say, be something like a 42-37 or something like that. You want it to be a 42-17. That would be perfect for you. So I think whilst Detroit are on their actually, I won't. We'll move into the next segment on that part. But regarding of Detroit, the highlight of the game was, of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown doing a Philly special. That was, or the 3-1-3 special, as Detroit would now prefer to call it. So that was quite special as well. And overall, this Detroit team, although you could say the Vikings are sitting at 4-0 and they're playing very well, Detroit right now are looking like a team that, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. We're here for the long run. And I think I genuinely think they can take on any team in the NFC currently as it stands.
I agree with that in terms of the Lions. Because if you look at, I know that obviously I've given Jared Goff a fair bit of stick in terms of his ability to play in the pocket and under pressure and stuff like that. But he was 18 for 18, 100% in terms of his throws, 292 yards, 2 touchdowns. With a passer rating of 155.8. Granted, Amon-Ra St. Brown was 1 for 1 and had a passer rating of 135.4. So maybe he's now your QB too. But I just think it's one of these, and I agree with that. I think there is going to be a level of I suppose the need to be pragmatic when it comes to closing teams down and shutting games off, because yes, it's okay to do it in the probably in the regular season in terms of taking out being aggressive on the offense and stuff like that, and playing aggressively. But when it comes to the playoffs, it's a completely different ball game, and you've got to be able to. You're coming up against essentially the best teams in the NFC. Something like a game against the Niners, who have a significantly better defense than Seattle, they will shut you down. So you need to be a bit like. We've talked enough about the NFC Championship game last year, where you probably should have kicked field goals at least twice rather than going on fourth downs. It's things like that which can cost you. Well, it does cost you games. So where Dan Campbell maybe needs to be a bit more pragmatic and just take the hit on the points, get the points on the board, and keep yourself in that position of being in the league. But they're fun to watch. I do enjoy watching the Detroit Lions. I like a Dan Campbell team, so they are enjoyable at this point. But I think they've still got a long way to go in terms of the back end of the season and the playoffs. But as it stands, for me, they're the best team in the. I would, from my perspective, they're the team to beat at the moment in the NFC.
Well, I'm going to say it's one of those where I think the problem for me is that we can't have a complete game on both sides of the ball. Like you say, you've got a 42-20, 42-27, 42-20. No, it wasn't. It was
29.
42-29. Last few weeks, defense have been fantastic, absolutely electric. The last 3 weeks, and then just the offense hasn't quite got going, and they've done just enough to get by in 2 out of the 3 games. This week, the offense was electric, and then maybe just defense did just about enough to get by again. In the end, the one thing I will say, though, that killed us more than anything, especially on defense, was penalties. And this is something that I want to get into as part of the conversation later on in the episode. But penalties were horrendous. We gave up over 100 yards in penalties. That cannot continue to happen. And again, I'll get onto that a little bit later on. My real question to you all, and I truly mean, when I say this question, and I mean it's ever so serious, as I'm always serious and very much serious in what I say. Last week, I watched Jared Goff take off a whopping 7 yards, 8 yards to earn us a first down. Pure wheels, Michael Vick-like, insane. This week, we watched him go 18 of 18. Technically 19 because he did miss a pass that got balled back for a penalty on the Seattle, so he got away with that one on the stat sheet. And then obviously caught the pass this week. Is it time we seriously have a conversation around this league of Jared Goff being a true triple threat? A true triple, I'm talking Michael Vick level rushing ability. We're talking Jerry Rice with the hands. And we're talking Mormons with the eyes. Come on.
I don't know what's in your rice caramel latte, mate, but that's a bit of a reach. I'm very honest. Don't get me wrong, Jared Goff is a very good quarterback for what he has done so far. He came to Detroit after coming off after the Rams sent him to Detroit. They got Stafford on the way as well, and he's had to rebuild up his reputation. Let's be real, but he's actually done it in a very, very good way. And he has performed admirably well. You know, he is borderline MVP candidate because he hasn't really done anything wrong, but he hasn't exactly wowed us in any way, shape, or form. We're still waiting for that one game where, you know, he puts the team on his back and he literally carries them to that win. We're literally.
The thing that I find with Jared Goff, and I will always say it, and I've said it to you, Fletch, many a time, at the moment he has the best offensive line in front of him in the league, which gives him the opportunity to be able to spend time going through his reads. The moment that he is not able to go through his reads, he falls apart. We've seen it. We saw it in the NFC Championship game. We've seen it throughout the years when he was at the Rams. I don't think he's as bad. I think he has learned and he has progressed and he has got better. But that's still my niggling feeling about him, and what stops him from being that elite player is I just think he's too slow with his reads. And I think that's what's holding him back from, like I said, being that quarterback that carries his team on his back and gets him through, like the way that Matt Stafford used to do every single season with Detroit, the way that he's sort of doing it with us, because we don't really have much of a choice at the moment. He just needs to be able to... We need to see him under a bit of pressure to be able to see if he's actually got over that properly. And for me, that's where I'm still... That's where I have the fall line with him being an MVP candidate. The fact he only got -2 in rushing yards last week. He's not a triple threat.
Look, you can't have them all. You can't have them all.
No, but I think he's shown significant improvements, and he's improved his reputation as a quarterback that can. The reason why he went number one in the draft in 2016, I think it was 2017. So he's proving himself, and he's being given the opportunity to prove himself. And I think that he's the sort of quarterback that Dan Campbell has used very well. But for me, I still have reservations, probably because of the way that he was at the Rams. I will still always have those niggling feelings about that in terms of his ability to be quicker at reading the game and reading where his own reads and where he needs to go. And I do think that they've worked on that, and I think having that elite O-line really benefits him in that sense.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Truly appreciate it. And we've gone through this conversation numerous times. And yeah. So with that in mind, we start getting on to what we're actually here for, which is this upcoming weekend's football. On that, I was going to go through a couple. I've got one bit of news here properly. I think something else has been added recently, but I can't think of off the top of my head of what it is. So all I've got here is that Christian McCaffery has Achilles tendonitis in both of his legs, been announced this week. It is slightly worse in one of his legs than the others, we are led to believe, but Christian McCaffery has Achilles tendonitis in both of his legs. What that looks like for the rest of the season, we don't know, but it potentially could mean he's out for the rest of the season. Sam, take that smile off your face. No joking, Sam. But anyone listening on audio, Sam was not smiling. Don't worry.
It is killing my fantasy teams. I have a lot of him in fantasy, but apart from that, generally quite
happy. So with that in mind, is that are we starting to look away from the 49ers as a true contender again for this season? And I know, Karl, on this note, before I let you run away with this one, you've mentioned on numerous occasions you've been the number one for beating the drum for this. The 49ers have a year. The 49ers have one more year to go with what they're going for before Brock Purdy wants some Watson Wonga, and they've got a lot of people to pay next year. If we're not looking at the 49ers this year anymore because they've lost a star running back, a couple of things may not go for them as they previously wanted. Is that it? Are we looking at? We've seen the best of this 49ers era, and are we now to look away at other teams for the next few years?
No, not yet. The 49ers are still a juggernaut in the NFC. They're still, until someone, as I said to you from the start of this pod, until someone knocks them off their perch, it's still the 49ers, the conference to lose. There's not saying that there's no other teams that can go after them. We know Detroit can challenge them. If Minnesota continue this run of form, I wouldn't be against Minnesota because defensively, Brian Flores has got that team working like an absolute machine, and they've got a very good run. Aaron Jones is coming off. When we thought he left Green Bay, for us he's going to take a decline now. Nope, he has. He's excelled even more. Plus, you've still got you've got Justin Jefferson. You've now got Jordan Addison back from his injury. You've got Taylor Naylor, a wide receiver 3. Not to mention the fact as well, TJ Hawkinson returns in a couple of weeks' time from injury. He's now on his 21-day practice window as well. So you can't rule out Minnesota. I would probably go something as say as the Buccaneers. I think the Bucs are there to be taken seriously. I think the Falcons can be taken seriously as well. But the rest of and as I said to you earlier, Washington, don't write off Washington. I don't think they're going to make the NFC Championship. I think that's a bridge too far for them. But a team that could say be the fly in the ointment, Washington are not out of it as well. If the Rams were fit and healthy, I'd probably say I'll give the Rams a chance of making the playoffs as well.
Based on the way our linebackers were playing, I wouldn't. Jesus, I've never seen such bad linebacking in my life. But yeah, it really hurts me to say that the Niners are the team to beat this, as they always will be. I think the fact that Jordan Mason has stepped up and shown he can be a good step in for McCaffrey. I'm not saying he is McCaffrey, but he's a good alternative. The fact that they have the likes of, Kyle Juszczyk, Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall still to come back from his injuries. They've got pieces. Even when players go down and important players go down, they've got players to replace them.
Yeah.
Dre Greenlaw's been out for the whole season so far. Does it look like they've really missed him? Not really.
They haven't missed CMC either because they've got Mason running the ball.
Exactly. So, it's the fact that they have probably individually 7 or 8 elite players. They have enough in the locker, in their whole roster, to be able to cope with losing a couple of those pieces. My only concern would be is if they don't win this year, and if I know Trent's just signed a new contract, but if he decides that he, wants to do a Donald and wants to retire, they could be in serious trouble. However, Brock Purdy has shown what he can do getting out of the pocket, which is one of the big things that, if he couldn't do that, if he couldn't, scramble the way that he has been doing, then there would be bigger concerns. But I just think that it'll hinge on whether if they can keep Trent another year, then I think they have another year to go. If they can keep him another 2 years, they have another 2 years to go. But my concern is always going to be is that when that Purdy contract hits, what are they going to do? Because realistically, you're not going to be able to keep your Christian McCaffreys, your Fred Warners, your Trent Williams,
Deebo
Samuels, your Brandon Ayuk, even
Kittle.
though he paid and turned out to be like Tony. You need to have all of these pieces have got to be able to be paid. I think there are some players, I think someone like a George Kittle probably would stay on a lesser contract in terms of more guaranteed money, to help the team. He seems that sort of player.
Yeah.
But I think there are others in that team. Am I right in saying that Hufanga needs to be paid next year?
Yeah, I think so.
I could see him demanding big money because when he came into the league, he was phenomenal. The only thing is that he always manages to sort it out, does Shanahan? He always manages to find a way. Not a way to get to win it, because he's a serial choker, but he finds a way to get close. And he'll always find a way to work around and work the best that he can. But yeah, I just don't see them winning a Super Bowl anytime soon still.
Yeah.
And I think that, like Carl's said, the NFC as a whole, in terms of teams challenging, is slightly weaker than, say, on the other side. Although the Chiefs are the ones that basically dominating everything, I think there's a lot more teams on the AFC that do potentially stand a chance of getting there, whereas I don't think there is as much on the NFC in terms of challenging the Niners.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. On that note, just really quickly before we move on, do either of you have any more news that you'd like to bring forward, or is that just about it for the week?
Rashid Rice has been put on injured reserve now from his injury, or rather from his hilarious calamity with Patrick Mahomes last week. A lot of what I don't like is the fact a lot of fans have been getting on his backs because obviously of his incident in the off season, which we won't get into mention, and they're getting on his back and I couldn't have been any more happier for someone to be so injured after what he had done. And I'm like, you don't wish on people's injuries, you do not.
No.
But it puts the Chiefs in a bit of a hole now. Because Marquise Brown's out, Rashid Rice is out, Kelsey's out of form as of late. Who are you going to rely on? Juju Smith-Schuster? The rookie? Xavier Worthy? I mean, Xavier Worthy's about the same body build as me. Skinny. Very skinny.
Isaiah Pacheco is out for at least until probably week 10, I reckon.
Yeah, but they got Kareem Hunt, though. Come on.
What, Mr. Fumble himself?
No, that's Ramondre Stevenson.
I don't know. Kareem Hunt loves a fumble.
Well, my other actual bit of news, which has just reminded me, this conversation has reminded me, a young man over in Sin City, over in Las Vegas, has requested to leave. He could solve a couple of teams' wide receiver troubles. Now, this young man, by the name of Davante Adams, I'm sure, if you don't know who he is, then welcome to your first season watching the NFL. I hope you enjoy football. He could solve. We've been linked with him to the Detroit Lions. I don't think that's even an avenue I want to entertain at the moment. Don't think that's ever going to happen. He wants to reportedly play with a QB who he's previously known. Now, there are two QBs in the league he has previously played with. That'd be Mr. Aaron Rodgers over at the New York Jets and Derek Carr over at the New Orleans Saints. Those two are currently the favourite spots for him to land, but there are a couple of others, including, now, if this man wants a ring, where better to go than a place that currently now has wide receiver troubles in Kansas? Could you see someone like Davante Adams going in, or do you think it's too much of an addition for a couple of temporary problems, like a permanent solution to a temporary problem?
Here's the problem with what you've got with that. It's all right saying, yes, he could end up going to the Jets. He could go to Kansas City. He could go to Detroit. He could go to the Saints. He could go to, he wants to go to a team, but he does not have something in the clause in his contract, and someone where you can't be moved.
No trade clause.
No trade clause. He doesn't have a no trade clause in his contract, so the Raiders have his contract in their name. So basically, they can send him to wherever they want to.
Panthers.
And they could easily send him to the Panthers. No, because they will only send. Here's the thing, though. It also comes to cap space as well. And I heard what you said, Fletch, regarding of the Saints. He wants to go back to play with Derek Carr because obviously he played with him at college and so on. Have you seen their cap? It's not great. And next year, it goes through the floor.
Yeah, but in all fairness, the only thing I would say about the Saints is they are the cap kings. The amount of times that they've been 70, 80, 90 million below the cap and still managed to get over the line somehow. They are the cap kings. But the thing that I have with Davante Adams is, I get the whole, they don't have to trade him to anywhere. The likelihood is they probably wouldn't want to trade him to KC because divisional rivals,
Yeah.
may not want to go down that road. But from what I've heard is that if the Raiders are going to want to do the trade, they're going to want a second-round pick and some other comps. Now, realistically, who's going to give up a second for someone who's 31-year-old, who's realistically had a few troubles over the last couple of years with the Raiders? He's not got his way when he moved over there. Derek Carr got shipped out straight away. I think he's at the back end of his career now, especially when we look at other wide receivers in his position who are similar ages, who are starting to see that decline. What do you want to do? Do you want to go play with your mates, or do you want to win a ring? Given the opportunity, if he had the choice, he'd go to KC. Realistically, that's his best opportunity at getting a ring. If he goes to the Saints, is he going to win a ring? Probably not. If he goes to the Jets, is he going to win a ring? Probably not, but has a good chance. So I think it's, for me, I would be looking at trying to convince them to send me to KC. Realistically, they're going to turn around and go, well, we're not going to send you where you want to go because you're being a difficult little arsehole. So they're going to send him to whoever basically wants to pay for him. And in terms of other teams that have wide receiver issues, I can't really see him going to any of them. So I don't think he's going to get traded at all. Personally,
because the problem is because Devontae Adams is on his contract. What's he going to do? Run it all the way down? Because by the time that happens, he'll be 35, and by then you've got no trade value. Your production on the field probably would have declined as well.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult situation Devontae Adams has put himself in. But he's obviously not happy in in Las Vegas. He's obviously not happy there. But when you've got either Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell throwing you the ball, or rather lack of being given the ball to, it does start to become a bit stressful. It does start to be a bit of a pain. And do I think if he went to the Jets, I think there's a possibility he would end up getting traded to the Jets, because him teaming back up with Rodgers again, there is a little bit of I'm not going to say bad blood. I'll say spoiled milk between Rodgers and Garrett Wilson currently. That doesn't.
He's not throwing to him, which is a concern.
Yeah, and Rodgers has this he's that egotistical arsewipe sometimes. That if he say, okay, all the time.
Let's not get Fletch on the Aaron Rodgers.
Don't get me started on him, please.
Because what we saw from Rodgers, he will throw the receiver the ball, but if you drop it or you make a mistake on it, he will not throw to you for the rest of the game.
No,
I mean that was the issue that he had at the back end of when he was at the Packers, wasn't it? He made a complaint about the fact that he only had rookie receivers to throw to, and none of them could catch the ball. Realistically, you can't expect rookies to come into the NFL and be able to have sticky hands every single game, every single catch. It just doesn't work like that. Devontae
Adams, Randall Cobb, or even Jordy Nelson, for that matter, they're not coming through the door anytime soon. So you're stuck with what you got. You have to work with what you got. But it's his way or the highway. It's a prototypical narcissistic trait, and it rubs people up the wrong way.
Yeah, I want to say one thing as well, though. I know that during the off-season, Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers had a bit of a link-up, and they were both going on about how great it is, and look how lovely it is that we've both been able to catch up. And I think Davante Adams, on a couple of occasions, you could almost see him angling a little bit, just a bit like, how great would it be for us to be back together again, and all that sort of stuff. So I think if he was going to go to anywhere, and look, if any franchise I think is going to bend over a little bit to make their QB happy right now, it's going to be the Jets, who say, you want Davante Adams, we've got to shift some things around, but we'll shift those things around if you really want Davante Adams. Which but I do think as well, if you do want to punish him a little bit, don't send him to the Panthers, send him to the Titans, because he can join in the
In the over 30.
Like the Renaissance.
The OAP wide receiver corps.
It's the Saga. It's the Saga franchise now, isn't it? With the receivers.
He can be part of the Renaissance memes. We can shift
the wide receiver graveyard. That's what the Titans are now, isn't it?
It's the MLS for wide receivers. Or Dubai, not Dubai. What was it? The Saudi League for wide receivers.
League.
But also, but you look at, you could be part of those Renaissance Will Levis memes. We could have 1 week it'd be a Will Levis meme, 1 week it'd be a Devontae Adams meme, 1 week Will Levis, 1 day. I think we could make it work. But anyway, that's enough on that today. We'll get start actually probably getting.
Just one other piece of news very quickly was Von Miller's been suspended for 4 games.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, that's unfortunate. However, we've got personal content. Yeah, there's been a couple of them coming out recently. I actually need to check on some of these coming forward a little bit more. With that being said, we need to have a look at this week's upcoming games. So, a couple of little things I want us to talk about, a couple of little things I find interesting. And I do want to warn people, by the way, I should have probably done this at the start. I live in a very heavily Orthodox Jewish area. It is the holiday of Sukkot this week, in a couple of weeks, and where my neighbours have decided that anywhere between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. is a great time to use power tools in the garden to build their sockets. So if you at any point over the next couple of weeks hear drills and power tools while we record, please know that it will be like nearly 11 o'clock at night, and yes, my neighbours are doing that. Or if not, it's probably my wife snoring. It could be any of those things. So with that in mind, again, let's say we'll get onto this week. Just wanted to warn everybody beforehand. First thing I want us to talk about. Heading into week 5, we have 2 teams that remain undefeated. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings. We also have 1 winless team in the Jacksonville Jaguars. My question to you, I want to see, because I think this is it's quite fun. You would think it would be one, not the other, but you never know. Which one is more likely to happen first? The Chiefs lose, the Vikings lose, or the Jaguars win? Or shall we say, which streak is going on? Which one are we going to be left with? More likely to be left with an undefeated team or a winless team in a few weeks? Which one of those is going to go on longer? This week, the Kansas City Chiefs face the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football. Is it Monday night or Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football. And then, Monday Night Football. And then the Vikings face the New York Jets in London on Sunday. And finally, the Jags play the Colts. Sam, which one of these do you find the most likely to continue going forward?
I see the Vikings being the team that will be left 5-0. So I think the Jaguars are going to win. I mean, the issues that the Colts are facing at the moment, I just think the Jaguars are going to somehow pull out a win. It just seems like one of those things. You're 0-4. They need something to grasp onto before they take 2 games over to London. Yeah. They need a win. They're going to be desperate for a win, and I think they'll just about scrape over the line. The Colts seem to be really unreliable. 1 week they seem to be really good. Next week they seem to be terrible. I just don't see them. It feels like it's going to be one of those weeks where they're going to be a bit crap. And I think Jonathan Taylor may be out injured.
High ankle sprain.
Went down in the game.
I think it was high ankle sprain. I think he might be out for, if I'm not mistaken.
It's Trey Sermon who's taking over the role in the backfield, which is not a great thing to see for if you're a Colts fan. I don't think. I mean, Richardson was starting to use Pittman a bit more. Richardson obviously didn't play, and it was Flacco who was playing.
Yeah.
There's too many things that add up there that makes me think the Jags could get a win there. I think that it'll, it's one of those games where all of a sudden it'll suddenly click like it does, we've said, with Trevor Lawrence. He sometimes can produce moments of brilliance. He produces games the way he just seems to be. It shows why he is the number 1 pick of his year. And I just think this will be one of those games. I don't think it'll be particularly high scoring, but I think he'll get over the line. Tom's probably not going to like me for this, and your wife's going to love me for this. I think the Saints might get a win against the Chiefs. I think the Saints have been one of these teams where they've looked really good 2 games, and then they've just shot themselves in the foot 2 games. And I think this will be a game where the Chiefs are in a bit of a pickle in terms of their offense. I just see them getting it over the line. I see the Saints going to the Chiefs and just getting a win. It's going to be ugly, but it's going to be a win. And then obviously finally it's the Vikings against the Jets. The Jets again are one of those teams I just really don't know. They boggle me in how they play. They just seem to be all over the place. One week again seem to be okay, the next week terrible. And the Vikings just seem to be surprising any and every team going. Jordan Addison last week looked unbelievable again as he's starting to show as the wide receiver, one of the best wide receiver 2s in the league. And I just think that they have so many options in that offense that they'll manage it. And I think their defense has been probably one of the most surprisingly good defenses this year. So I think if they can maintain that defensive line and maintain the way that they're playing, they could easily roll, not roll the Jets over, but they could easily get a win against the Jets in London.
Fair enough. Well, just to kind of off what you were saying, then Jonathan Taylor has not practiced for 2 days in a row. So obviously we'll see what happens tomorrow. No one goes from did not practice, full practice on an injury. It's probably going to look at least very unlikely, if not completely. It's just not going to happen that he plays on Sunday. What about you, Karl? Is there anything there that you press Sam a little bit on anything, or are we in complete agreement?
Well, let me suppress Sam on the Kansas City Chiefs, for example. I do feel like... I think I'm going to be very honest. And I know Tom's going to be watching or listening for this, and don't take this the wrong way, sir. But the Chiefs have been dancing through the raindrops for the past 4 weeks. They've got through by skin of their teeth, by using their running game, and their defense has been bailing them out. Mahomes is not in good form. He's having a bit of a torrid start to the season so far. I think he's thrown an interception in every single one of his games this season, which isn't great. And we already spoke about at the start of the pod, Rashee Rice is now on IR, Pacheco's on IR, Hollywood Brown, he's out as well. Kelsey's not on form. You've got Kareem Hunt back, but as Sam's already alluded to, he fumbles the ball too much for our liking. Carson Steele also fumbles the ball, but he's a backup really. CEH is also out as well. So it is really a case of Mahomes has got to take this now, and he's now got to throw to Juju Smith-Schuster. He's got to throw to Xavier Worthy. He's got to throw to the second tight end now, and tight end in Noah Gray, if I'm not mistaken. So they're going to need to find ways to do this. What I find interesting about the Saints is the fact that their offensive line is very good. They have a very, very good running game in Alvin Kamara. And Derek Carr knows the Chiefs very, very well. He's played with them so many times when he was a Raider. So it'll be interesting how that one pans out. I can see the Saints stealing. I can see the Saints snicking it. But I'm going to push back on it. It goes, if this was in the Superdome, I would give the Saints but it's at Arrowhead. And in front of that crowd, and I know the Saints are used to hearing a very loud crowd because obviously the Caesars Superdome is one of the loudest buildings, in the NFL. But when it's Arrowhead, it's a completely different ball game. And I just think the Chiefs will once again pull the magic horseshoe out of their backside and get the win. So that's why I see them going to 5-0. With Minnesota, I feel like they're going into a bit of a hot and cold situation when they face the Jets. Because you are right. If you've seen the Jets so far, they lost 32-19 to the 49ers, which is no big deal, no be all and end all. It's the first game of the regular season, and you're playing a Super Bowl finalist. Not a lot you can do about that. they managed to not trip up over themselves against Tennessee had it not been for Will Levis turning into a wet lettuce and trying to throw the ball backwards, and then that. And then in week 3, Rodgers had his best game against my Patriots, which is not hard. Let's be real. It's not hard at the minute. And then last week, they couldn't even take the skin off a rice pudding against the Denver Broncos because their defense just suffocated them. So you don't know what you're getting with the Jets, really. So I think the Vikings will get the win over the Jets. So I don't see them losing the one. The Jags, they're just awful. I'm sorry. I'm going to be brutal with. Let's call it a spade a spade. The Jags are awful. They've got the worst defense in the NFL in points total, yards per game as well. They're not a good team right now, and it just feels like the Jags are in much trouble. And I know what you say, they could get a surprise good win over the Colts. If they were playing Anthony Richardson, I would agree with you to a certain degree, because Anthony Richardson is a very streaky player. He can throw 50, 60-yard bombs, but then can't make a simple 5-yard pass or simple check down. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. As quarterbacks, you need that level of consistency all the way through. You got Joe Flacco. And if there's one thing Joe Flacco is very good at, he is very good at picking apart a weak defense. He gets that ball out insanely quickly. Even at his age, he can still do the job of playing a regular season quarterback at a very high level. So I'm going to say, and the Jags need to win this game more than you think, because if you think about it, they then go into back-to-back London games against the Bears and the Patriots, and then after that, their schedule gets ridiculous. They got the Packers, the Eagles, the Vikings, the Lions, the Texans. Yeah. I'm going to be I'll say this, okay? If they don't win against the Colts, Doug Peterson's ass is very truly on the hot seat. If they don't if they don't win any of their games in London, you might as well leave him behind in London, because there's no way he's surviving. There's no way he's surviving that if you lose back-to-back London games. No chance.
I agree with that. I think for me, this game, and this is why I think that they'll do it, because it's because of this fact, is the fact that for me, this is the deciding game for Doug Peterson's season in terms of whether he's going to be there next year or not. I still don't think he's going to be there next year, no matter what. I think he's shown that from what he's done in terms of losing 4 games. Guaranteed you are losing to a Dolphins team that actually did have Tua, a Browns team which we all expect it to be a lot better than they are. So, given that, the Browns, again, it was only just a short win. But then the Bills and the Texans, there are 2 teams that you expect them to lose to anyway. So there's 3 out of those 4 games where you are expecting a loss, and the Browns team, which could have gone either way. So they're going to be 0-4 or 1-3 going into those after those 4 weeks anyway. But yeah, these next 3 games, I think if they don't win 2 of these games, Doug Peterson's gone by the end of the season.
By the end of the season, I think he's gone earlier than that.
I just don't see the point in getting rid of him this season earlier, because like we said, Packers unlikely to beat them, Eagles unlikely to beat them. The way the Vikings are playing, unlikely to beat them. The Lions, you're not going to beat them.
The Jags, I will say this: the Jags, they've got a lot of talent on that team. You need to salvage it. See, if you think this season is already heading down the pan with this coach, and you need a quick change, because remember, we all know what a new coach bounce back is like. It actually helps you. So, I can understand where you're coming from, is to leave it till the end of the season. But by that point, you're back to square one again.
I don't see them getting rid of him before the bye week. At the earliest. So if we're going to go on anyone, by week, if he's going to be got rid of at any point, it'll be week 12.
I want to say their bye week is like week 12.
Yeah, so after that, you've got the Texans, Titans, Jets, Raiders, Titans, Colts. You've got 2, 3, 4 potential winners there. So if they're going into that bye week and they are 0-11, then I would happily say he's going to be gone. I think if they go into that 2-11, 2-9, 3-8 push, I think they keep him till the end of the season.
It's a weird
But
one.
I don't see him being there next year.
Yeah. One thing I will just say back on the Minnesota Vikings, okay? They do beat the Jets. They'll go 5-0, which will be the first time since 2016 where they went 5-0. They didn't make the playoffs that year.
Mm-hmm.
They lost 8 of 10. Sorry, they lost 7 of 10. They lost 8 of 10. Beg your pardon.
Well, the thing is, though,
I think
I'm
it's 7
of
10. Sorry, let me just look.
Sorry.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, they lost 8 of 11 after going 5-0.
So what? They would have gone 8-8. That's 8-8.
8-8 that season. Yeah.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think we went 9-7 that year as well. It was the last year before. Yeah, I'm not saying his name. Looking though, I think with the Jags, this is the worst thing I think for them is where their bye week is, because of just how that makes the decision to. It's not like you have a bye week in the next couple of weeks where you can truly say that the season's salvageable, and then you give the interim or whoever a week to really get that bye week. Really helps in the first half of the season if you're in that kind of predicament, and that's the worst thing. Now, on a personal note, as Chapman said on Monday, I love to make it about the Lions. I'm going to make this one a little bit about the Lions as well. Their bye week is directly after we play us. Would I would, as much as you don't want to see someone lose the job, yeah, if we put the final nail in that coffin and absolutely humiliate them, I'd be okay with that. That's fine. But no, I think it's one of those weird ones. What are we taking into account? That travel and how the travel affects teams in London this week, by the way, for the Jets, Vikings, and whether we've seen it time and time again where a team looks, they play at Wembley and they look nothing like we thought they would do, primarily possibly because of that travel and that week of just mess and everything just kind of switch. The Jags obviously being the most acclimated to doing that kind of thing, they do it every year. But are we taking into so I think while both teams are in that position, I struggle to see or call truly what this Vikings Jets game is going to look like to say, okay, the Jets won't, the Vikings will win it or won't. Just on a personal wonder.
I just think that if the only thing that could potentially scupper it, I think, is can that Vikings defense be sustainable? We know that the Jets defense is sustainable. It's a very, very good. And, the likelihood is that you're probably going to see Sauce Gardner versus Jay Jettis in a battle of the who's better and who's got the bigger bollocks, essentially. So realistically, if who's gonna win out of that battle, I think that's probably going to be where it's won and lost. It's not going to be in the trenches this time. I think that both teams have very good. Well, the Vikings have a very good O-line. The Jets' O-line's looked okay. It's managed to keep Rodgers okay for the most part. Probably not as vertical as he wants to be. They both have decent D-lines. But I think it's in the secondaries where this game is going to be won and lost.
Very much so.
And I think that's where it's at. And I think if the Jets... I do agree that there is probably... We don't always see the best games when they come to London. I think that the games can be a little bit fractured in a way. It doesn't look as clean. So that could play a part. I just think that the Vikings, they seem to have an identity, and I'm still not sure as to what the Jets' identity is yet. And it feels like I said, it feels like the Aaron Rodgers show that isn't really fully working just yet.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I mean, the fact that they've got, arguably one of the top 3 running backs, and he is just not really getting used, is just really baffling for me.
Yeah.
The fact, I mean, even Braylon Allen has looked really good. In that last game against the Broncos, he couldn't run for anything. I don't think unless I go back to their yardage, I mean, I don't think their yardage was at all great in that game. So, I just think it's one of those weird games that I think that they could be. Yeah, like I said, Breece Hall had 4 yards and Braylon Allen had 34 yards. Aaron Rodgers had 26 yards.
Yeah.
He's 40. So, I just don't see that. Based upon the way that both teams are playing, the Vikings look fearless going forward. The Jets don't seem to understand what they're doing, and I think that's where, for me, that's why I've gone for the Vikings. They seem to have an identity. They seem to know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's fair.
They seem to have a bit more fun, and we already know what Kevin O'Connell's like. He's a great, great, great coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. But one thing I will say as well, though, just to mention on the Saints Chiefs, she's asleep right now, so I can say it. I think the Saints have been found out a little bit. I think no one quite knew what this. We all thought the Saints were going to be bad this year, and they aren't. They aren't terrible. And we'll put our hands up. I went on one of the shows recently and put my hands up and said that I was wrong. They're not terrible, but I think no one expected what was going to come out of the Saints this week. What was going to come out of the Saints the first couple of weeks. I think a couple of teams had a look and went, "Oh, okay, fair enough. That's where they're going." And then immediately, a couple of teams maybe started to figure out where they're at, what they're attacking, how they're attacking it, and then went, okay, right. And they've been found out a little bit. Not totally, truly, and completely, but I think they've been found out a little bit and will no longer continue to go. And I think one of the things that you are not going to look forward to is playing a team like the Chiefs, who, as battered and bruised as they may be right now, but go and facing a team like the Chiefs, filled with veteran DC and Andy Reid, and then that team who knows how to pull wins out of their backsides. It's not a position I think you want to be in. So for that reason alone, I think the Chiefs go 5-0. I did, and the Saints now fall to a losing record on the season. We're all good. I'm safe.
Did we get an apology?
No, of course you wouldn't. Oh, you did.
So what we're hearing, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, what we're hearing here is you all know, you all listen, all 2 of you listen all the way through. Sam doesn't even listen to the other episodes. That's disgraceful.
I don't listen to our own episodes. I don't listen to podcasts. I just participate in.
We did, and I had a number of. What the best thing was, by the way, and we talked about this in a DM before, by the way, because we're going to start looking. We're going to bring a couple more people in on the episodes, and try and get a couple of guests in, because that's what we want to start doing now. Now we're a bit more comfortable with each other. So it was here somewhere before. My wife lovingly prepared a statement on Monday, at which, as we went down to record, because a couple of people couldn't make it, I ended up being on the episode, which was lovingly placed in front of me, a full statement. It missed a very key part that she brought out. Now I come off, my wife comes on, delivers a statement. She does not deliver 2/3 of this statement, by the way. I think she kind of panicked a little bit as she got on. Fair enough, I understand it. Chapman is a very scary person, especially given the situation of that game. She then fired a shot at Ollie and then walked off. And even I'm like, whoa! So she ends it and goes, we lost. It was a good game. We lost to the Falcons. It is what it is. At least we didn't lose to the Raiders. Walked. And I was like, she walks off. And as we kind of, as we walk past each other, I kind of looked like, you could have told me that you were going to fire a shot. So I've got to walk into this now as Ollie sat there going, what the fuck did I do? So again, I want to reiterate this on the podcast. I had no knowledge of this. She is a grown ass woman. I will not tell her what to and what not to do. She can say whatever she wants. I was not made privy to this information that a shot was going to be fired. Speaking though of I think we were talking about Doug Peterson. We were talking about bye weeks. Really nice little. Take that. It's not a segue if I have to run all the way back to it and bring it back over, but it's a segue into the next little thing I wanted to talk about. Now, this week we really enjoyed the last couple of weeks doing full 16 game slates, all 32 teams playing. With the introduction of the London games, it also means the introduction of bye weeks. The bye weeks are happening now. We'll only have 14 games this week, as 4 teams are on a bye week. Those teams are my Detroit Lions, the LA Chargers, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Tennessee Titans. Now I have a question for both of you. Well, I have 2 questions, a 1A and a 1B. Which of these 4 teams will feel most aggrieved at having a bye week now? I have a case.
Well, the 4 teams,
and I also want to. Which I want to
Titans, Chargers, Lions, and Eagles.
So okay. Actually, we'll say it's a 1A, 1B. This is 1A. The whole question's 1A, 1B. Which team feels the most aggrieved having a bye week right now? And the other one is, which team of those is sat there probably a bit more like, okay, fair enough, I would appreciate this bye week right now. I think there's a correct answer for both of them, but I will allow you all to.
I'm probably gonna. I think the one, let's say, the team's going to be more aggrieved is going to be Tennessee. And the reason why they've just come off their first win and then they go straight into a bye. You would have liked to have thought they could have carried up. They got that win. Now maybe could they roll the momentum a little bit more into the next game, then the next game, then the next game. And I feel like the bye week has come at a really bad time for them. You know, you just got your first win. Cool. Now you got to wait a week before you play again. There's a good chance you could end up losing the game after the bye. So it kind of puts you off your momentum a little bit in a sort of way. But the one team I think desperately needed the bye, I think it's going to be Philadelphia. I think it's the Eagles because their mismanagement has been shocking. Nick Sirianni is, I don't know what the hell. I know he's trying to be law and order here, but Jalen Hurts not playing up to the standard. You know, okay, they've had injuries to AJ Brown and to Devontae Smith and so on, but they're probably using Saquon Barkley all the time. But the Eagles' defense has been absolutely shambolic in the first 4 games. They haven't performed really. They haven't performed that well, and Hurts doesn't look like the same quarterback we saw from the Super Bowl when he played the Chiefs a couple of years ago. He doesn't look like that same quarterback, and I don't understand why. So I think they need to have a hard reset and then go again after the bye week. I think so. That's probably where I'll go for. I don't know if you two agree or not, but that's what I've gone for. Tennessee will feel most aggrieved, and I think Philadelphia need to have got the bye at the right time because they need it. Not so much as health wise. It's more scheming, it's more game planning. It's actually the fundamentals of football that you actually need to go back to and start understanding a bit better. Because let's be real here, you're in the NFC East. The Giants are not doing anything. Washington are a dark horse, but you should be able to deal with them. And then you've got the Cowboys who are all over the place right now. It's there for the Eagles to take, but they keep falling into potholes. So they need to think about this on hard over the bye week. I'll let the floor take it.
Yeah, I think I agree with the Tennessee one to a certain degree. I think you've just got your first win. You maybe want to push on from that, and obviously, I mean, personally, I don't like early bye weeks. I think that they really can hinder your team quite significantly, just purely because it's like you can't develop that momentum, which you kind of sometimes need at the start of a season. I think the Lions are probably going to be one of the teams which are a bit aggrieved by it because, like we're saying, it's that momentum. I mean, they've beat the Rams in the first week, lost to the Bucs, which was probably a bit of an upset, and then beat the Cardinals and Seahawks. I mean, they're starting to turn the screw a bit and starting to build a little bit of momentum there. And then they have a bye week, and then it's bang straight into playing the Cowboys, the Vikings, and the Titans. I think if you didn't have that bye week in there, going straight into that Cowboys game, if they would have had it in week 5, say the bye week been pushed, everything's moved. Going into that Cowboys game, they'd have been licking their chops at that game I think then going into the Vikings, which would have been a very, very feisty game, I think you lose a bit of that momentum that they could have had having maybe a later bye week. The first one I looked at in terms of the teams that would be desperately looking at that bye week and glad that it's here is the Eagles. Just to be able to, I think reset on hopefully getting AJB and Devontae Smith back in week 6. I think they'll be glad to have. The other thing is that I think that they need to work on that centre. They need that to build some form of relationship between Hurts and that centre, because I think there is a struggle. They are really missing Jason Kelce at that centre position. And I think it's not just Hurts that's missing it. I think the rest of the O-line is missing it, because even Landon Johnson has not looked the same player that he was when Kelce was there.
It's scheme-wise when it comes to the centre as well, because there's something I heard earlier on today. When coaches go from team to team, you don't regularly... You see some players go with him, but you barely see centres. The only couple I can actually try and work out was Alex Mack, because he was in Cleveland, he then went to Washington, and he then went to the 49ers. What did he have in common? Kyle Shanahan. It was all about scheming, because it is one of the most important positions on the roster. That, as I basically said, a centre is basically the point of contact where the play starts. And if your centre doesn't deal with it, the guards and the tackles have got no chance.
Yeah, I mean, the centre is sort of like the
heart and soul.
He's the captain as well. I mean, I know that we talk about the quarterback being the main guy, but the centre is the guy who makes. He's the one that, I mean, you watch them when they're playing. He's the one that's pointing at different defensive players and picking out those potential, blitzes and things like that they need to be watching for, or different players that are going to be playing in different ways. And I think to lose someone with Kelce's experience and just that connection. I mean, we all talk about the connections between wide receivers and quarterbacks and such like that. The connection between a quarterback and a centre has to be so tight. And if it's not, because I mean, realistically, he's the only guy who's going to be touching your ass in this whole game. You've got to have a good level of understanding with this guy, and he's just not got that at the moment, and he needs to work on that. And I think that's going to be one thing that I think this break is going to help them with, is be able to reset that, and hopefully that might then help Hurts, which will help then the rest of the team.
I agree. Actually, and I went on record, I think it was in the last episode, just saying the one thing I think the Eagles missed the most is Jason Kelce. And I think the one thing that Jalen Hurts has not looked right without Jason Kelce either. So I completely agree. On both of those counts, I completely agree. And I think the number one thing I said was, I don't want to pound the rock for what Tom Brady was doing with his old boomer takes and all that sort of stuff that Tom Brady's been coming out with lately. And I'm not going to sit here and say, well, quarterbacks these days can't read defenses and they don't learn programs and all that sort of stuff. But what I do think to a certain extent is I think maybe there are some quarterbacks who do not read defenses as well as others. And I think maybe Jalen Hurts is one of them. And Jason Kelce maybe was calling out some of the defenses for him because Jalen Hurts didn't know. And maybe didn't read them properly. Now that I don't want to be the person who goes truly on record, so I'm not putting out there saying that is the case. I don't know, and I don't want to put that on Jalen Hurts or anything like that, per se. But I do think that might be some of the problem, is they're missing. There's a reason they're missing Jason Kelce a little bit there. So I'm going, for that very reason, I'm going to agree that they will be the team that want this bye week the most, and I agree that Nick Sirianni needs to maybe douse a couple of fires while he's there. Yeah. There's a lot of questions on his job. He needs to take a long hard look in the mirror. I'm not saying that I had him tipped for someone who would be fired during this break, but he has been someone who I am looking at, along with Doug Peterson. I am looking at him as in you and Robert Saleh. They are two of the three coaches I'm with. You might not last very long. That you be grateful if you still have a job at the end of the year as a head coach in the NFL.
I think I think no matter what Robert Salah's done at the end of the year.
Quite
personally.
possibly. So my one C now, technically, to this question is there a team you're looking at around the league, and we can't use the Jacksonville Jaguars this time because we've already spoken about them, and I'm going to make you look a bit further afield. Who else around the league are you looking at thinking you would probably benefit from a bye week right now? And actually, before I do, I'm very sorry. Yes, absolutely, and I will let you make that case. I didn't actually say the team that I felt would be most aggrieved, and I agree. Potentially the Titans. I think the Lions have a couple of injuries. Brian Branch being a massive one as part of that defense on Monday. A lot of where the Seahawks were beating us was over the middle of the field, and that's Brian Branch's territory, where teams haven't beat us very much so far to date this season. So, and then there's Frank Ragnow, who's a bit banged up. There's a couple of players who are a little, and I actually think Terry and Arnold. I love Terry and Arnold, but that young man is very handsy. Very, very, very handsy, and he's been pulled up a lot for penalties. I think this is a great time to give Terry and Arnold a trial by fire for 4 games, then sit him down and say, right, let's look at the hands at the moment. Let's just look at how handsy you are. Maybe tone it down a little bit. So I think we've got a couple of great opportunities here. So for that reason, I'm going to say the Titans are the most aggrieved.
Mm-hmm.
They finally got that win. They could hopefully finally start to push on, and I don't know. So yeah. With that being said, Sam, over to you to state why everybody knows the Rams would benefit from a bye week right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the injury situation. We are absolutely decimated still. I mean, we've still got, just looking at me, there's a lot of these players that won't be coming back for the rest of the season, but we've got so many that are, the likelihood is we're probably not going to get Puka Nacua back until week 8. But Cooper Kupp is one that could, maybe if we had a bye week, he could potentially be back for the game after. I mean, to a certain degree, I'm glad that we've got our bye week in week 6 because, that might give us an opportunity to get Cooper Kupp back week 7. But yeah, I just think that we have so much going on off the field. And as I've already mentioned earlier in the show, those linebackers, Roseboom and Reader, I'm convinced that they have never played linebacker in their life. The way that they played in that game was so bad.
Yeah.
I think there was a clip that someone had pulled together where I think it was actually the Swift touchdown where the center and the right tackle basically just pushed them out of the way and treat them as if they weren't there, and basically they just didn't do their job, and it caused a touchdown. And I think we're starting to see this is where, had we have had Ernest Jones there, would it have been different? I really think it would have. And I think that we are now in a position where we could be really struggling to stop teams from putting points on us. I think if we can't score points, which is what we're struggling to do, I mean, I know that the Bears' defense is a good defense, but I still think we should have put more points against them. I think we need to sort of find a way to work on the defense because it's just not working at all. And I think we need to have that reset and allow the defense. I know the defense is young and we have a lot of issues, but it's still not working. And we need to find some way of getting it to work. So I think a bye week for us would have been brilliant. But we'll get it next week, so I suppose it's not a massive deal.
Yeah. I was going to say, my first thing was going to be when you started saying that was, when is your bye, when is the bye week? And then you answered the question for me. So I appreciate that. Carl, who do you think would be looking right now, essentially going, oh, God, I could really do with that extra few days preparing?
Hard to tell, really. Just trying to think. I think I'm probably going to say Seattle because they actually do have some injuries, and it's not good for them. And they're also coming off a Monday night game as well. It would have been more preferable to have the bye week then, to maybe get a week's healthy for their players and that. And the other one I'm thinking of is Indianapolis because obviously with Anthony Richardson out, with Jonathan Taylor out, even though it's a high ankle sprain. So obviously it's more than a week it takes to recover from a high ankle sprain, but it will give you a bit more of an idea of what you've got with Trey Sermon and that. I could even say my team, but we're just shit. I can't really, because we could do with it, but we do have injuries. Unfortunately, our injuries are season-ending. You're not going to get any better than that. Well, so
yeah, you kind of look at times like now, the teams that benefit from the teams that would always probably want the bye week are teams that are on a not very good, like not looking very good, maybe just need that extra week to figure themselves out. I think one thing that you said there, it always was, I've got to say, kind of thinking through a couple of things. I'm going to say the Giants, and I'm just like, they probably just want it all to stop. Not the bye week. They just want it all to stop. They just want the pain to go. I think it might be one of those looking for, just they want it all to stop.
Another team in terms of more of a team that's struggling that really could do with it in terms of not necessarily injuries, but just generally just seem to be a complete and utter mess, is the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
They would so much, to be able to just have a week off and just be able to go, right, what the fuck are we doing? What is going on? And just be able to sit down and sort that out because, Dak's not looked like the Dak we've seen. I mean, no, to be fair, he looks like the Dak that we have seen.
Yeah.
At his very lowest. He's the bad Dak rather than the good Dak. And that has a massive implication on CeeDee Lamb, who is their best, output. They don't seem to have a foggiest of who's actually meant to be their proper running back. They brought in Zeke. He did all right for a week and then has barely played. Rico Dowdle's been average at best. And I just think they need and that defense, I mean, we all thought that, even when the Cowboys have been crap on offense, their defense has stood up. Their defense has done bugger all this year. Obviously, I know, is Micah Parsons now out for a longer period of time? I know he went down with it and he went parted off.
I'll have a look, I'll Google it.
But I don't know if he's out for potentially a long term.
Well, he's out for more than 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah, all I'm seeing is that he's not practicing at the moment.
Yeah, so it's likely. So again, there's another reason. Bring back Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
But I just think, they need a reset in terms of more of the fundamentals of what they are as a team than necessarily about injuries.
Yeah.
So that would be, if I wasn't choosing my own team, that would be probably the one team I would say.
I think a couple of teams in the AFC North might want for a very similar reason, not necessarily because of injuries, but just because they've all just underwhelmed so far for the majority of the part. Maybe not the Ravens after this weekend, but yeah, the Browns might just want a week to, again, very similar, to kind of go, right, let's just rethink our position in this and what we're doing. Another team I was thinking of is the Cardinals, but that's a personal thing for me where I'm like, I truly think the Cardinals are better than they look. I've been out there. I've said my shit on Kyler Murray. I will continue to do so because it's out there now. I may as well stick to it. But I think they're better than the record suggests, and we've seen this again. I talk about it all the time. We've seen all these stories before. Habits and momentum are very quick to pick up when they're losing ones, and can be quite easy to pick up when they're winning ones. You just need to, if you're in the wrong side of it, you need that momentum to stop and halt it. And I think the Cardinals could go down. They've shown that they're better than they are. The record suggests, I think, so far this season on a couple of occasions. With that in mind, look, we've got a bit more content to release this weekend. So, and I'm relatively I'm looking at the clock here and thinking maybe we're trying to get through a couple of bits here. So I want to just run through a couple of games of note. Let's just talk through a couple of the games that we're looking forward to watching this weekend. If you want me to, I can rattle through all of them real quick, but I don't think we truly need to. Are there any games that are standing out to you as a game that you're like, wow, I need to see this one? I think tonight is going to be I think tonight's going to be extremely fun. Or could be the Bucks Falcons.
Yeah.
Quite like tonight's game. If I could muster up the ability to stay awake at 1 o'clock, then I would probably watch it. I think, the Bucks have a great offense. They have relatively good defense. The Falcons have the ability to have an unbelievable offense and seem to be lacking a little bit in defense. But have been good. Don't get me wrong. I think they've been good. I just think it'll be like you say, it'll be a fun game. I'm not saying necessarily going to think it'll be a high-scoring game,
no,
but I think it'll be a fun game.
Absolutely. One that I think, by the way, I'm sorry, Chapman, I think the Bucks win this a little bit and look a bit more comfortable while they're doing it, unfortunately. I'm very high on Baker Mayfield and the Bucks this year. And I think looking back at when we played them and we lost, at the time I wanted to feel aggrieved, but looking back now, I'm thinking, no, I think the Bucks team are legit, and we did not lose a game. We got beat by a team that was better than us on the day. I think this Bucks team's legit. What about you, Cal? Any games standing out to you?
Bills Texans for me. This one, finally, CJ Stroud gets to go toe to toe with Josh Allen. He's not one of the top 6 quarterbacks in the NFL, but this will be a game now where he can now make a case for him to say, yeah, I'm here to come to the party. I'm here to, add my name to this list. And also as well, it's the Stephon Diggs revenge game. So this is it's going to be tasty. It's going to be very, very, very tasty.
Are we going to see a Stephon Diggs actual thrown touchdown this week?
That'll be
because didn't he have one? Didn't he have one week 2? No, week 3.
Week 3,
he attempted one and it got ruled out, and then week 4 he nearly had another one and then ran for it.
If he does it against his former team, that'll be the ultimate FU to Sean McDermott and that. But no, this is going to be a really good game, and this will put the Texans on the map definitely if they somehow come away with the victory. They're not favourites. I think they're +1 underdogs, so it's going to be very tight, very close.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bills obviously not having Von Miller is a big loss, even though he only plays 35% of snaps. But in his last in his last 3 games, he's had 4 sacks. So that's a bit of production you've lost there massively.
He's also experience as well. You can never
Mm-hmm.
throw your hand over experience. I think
no, especially.
Oh, and Laramie Tunsil, please stop taking false start penalties. Good grief! Last week was a shambles regarding false start penalties.
The week before wasn't particularly great either, was it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
I'm going to say as well, though, that being said, on experience, at no situation can you turn your nose up at your experience like Von Miller has. Okay. And again, you mentioned the production, but I think as well, when you're going up against CJ Stroud, he's still only in his 2nd year. We forget that CJ Stroud is still because he looks so damn good all the time. But we forget, and he's still learning. All quarterbacks are still learning. He's still learning. He's still figuring things out. He's still going through certain things. He doesn't know everything yet. Experience in positions like that really helped because he can start to he just has a better understanding of what's going through CJ Stroud's head, and maybe reads it a little bit better. So I think especially in those situations, experience is really, really important.
I think the other game to mention, and again it's a divisional rivals game, and that's the Ravens-Bengals. This always throws up a good game.
Yeah.
And I think it will again this week. We already know these 2 teams don't like each other. And I think that the Bengals have the ability to maybe put up a few points on the Ravens. They have the players to do it. They just don't seem to have the connection at the moment.
No.
But what a game to build up and develop that connection again. And a way to sort of step up. I think Eric Hall was starting to look really good at the tight end position. I think, I cannot pronounce his name to save my life. Is it Iavasis or Iavasis?
Yeah, close
Like,
enough. Close enough. Even I can't pronounce his name.
He's looked good as the step up for the wide receiver 3 position. T. Higgins is starting to work his way back. And obviously, Jamar Chase is Jamar Chase.
Mhm.
If you can find him the ball, he'll do things.
Mm.
I think their biggest issue is their running back situation hasn't been as good as they expected. And Chase Brown and Zach Moss haven't been exactly setting the world alight. And I think if they can start, using them a bit more, maybe out of the backfield, a few more screenplays and things like that, then they may be able to get some good usage out of them. But we know what the Ravens can do. The fact that Derrick Henry pretty much bulldozed last week, he just absolutely demolished the Bills last week. I think it was 199 rushing yards. I think I made a joke to my Ravens friend. It's like, well, that's not good enough. He should be getting 200. But he's a wrecking ball at the moment.
That is the Baltimore Ravens' calling card right now. We know how to beat you, and that's by running up the effing middle with the king. That's all you're going to do. And I think that's what Cincinnati's game plan has to be in this one. You have to stop the run. You have to stop Derrick Henry running the ball. You have to keep Lamar Jackson contained. You have to dare him to throw the football. Lamar Jackson can throw for 300 yards, but he's not a consistent quarterback throwing the ball. And if the Bengals can somehow make him throw the ball and put him into tight situations, then you're giving Joe Burrow. He likes to wear that ball out. He's got Jamar Chase. He's got T. Higgins. He's got the other guy I'm not going to pronounce. So it's all going to come down to if the Bengals stop the run, they have a chance of winning this game. But if Derrick Henry just does destroy worlds like he's been destroying them all season, it's not going to be a contest.
Yeah, this has the potential to be either really close or a complete blowout.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. One game I'm going to throw out there that I think is going to be a good game for all the wrong reasons. I think this is the thing I can bring forward. I love terrible games because sometimes Thursday night football used to be my favourite. I love a terrible game with two terrible teams. You hang your head in shit, you hide. For all the wrong reasons, I think the Dolphins-Patriots is going to be a cracking game. I think you bring two divisional rivals who are both extremely terrible right now.
You need to be on crack to watch this game.
This is if you want Thursday night football in a game that's not on Thursday night football, this is the game for you. This is Thursday night football that you can watch on a Sunday. I feel like anything can happen, and Carl, you'll find out in a bit. I have your Patriots winning this one. I have your Patriots winning it because I think the Dolphins are so bad on offense at the moment that Tyreek Hill can't make a difference because Tyreek Hill just can't get in the game or anything like that. So, I just for me, if you ever look at the Premier League or you look at some of those games that have that there are two below mid-table teams that somehow they put on Monday Night Football or something. Both teams aren't great, but somehow they just match up well against each other. They're just going to end up playing. Things are going to happen that should not happen in any normal football game. For whatever reason, not because either team's good, but because the other one's bad. This is the game I think you should watch. True, I am very much looking forward to it.
This is not a case if either team can score points, as if they can move the fucking football down the field. That's going to be the biggest. It's going to be inept offensive drive after inept offensive drive.
Can they get field goals? That's what it is going to be. Can they get into field goal range?
Yes,
I think it's going to.
I will say this: if this game somehow goes into overtime on such a low score, Putin should just nuke the stadium for the greater good. He really should, because it's going to be.
I think
it's going to be a war crime. This game's going to be a war crime.
I said football. I think this could be a British football score. It's good. A 2-0, right? A safety will decide it. 2-0. It's going to go punt, safety, punt, turnover and downs, game over. Something ridiculous. No, I'm joking. But it could be high scoring. It could be low scoring.
It's not going to be high scoring. I can assure you that right now.
But here's the thing. If you just manage to connect a couple of passes together,
Jacoby Brissett can't throw the ball down the field more than 5 yards. If that's not the equivalent of dinking and dunking, I don't know what is.
You know what? If I was, I know you want to sit him, but I think a perfect game for Drake May to come into would be this game.
This guy.
This is the perfect game for Drake May, because there is the opportunity to show you what you're actually about against a team that realistically is not going to put up many points, but it gives you the opportunity to actually show what you can do. Doesn't mean that he has to play every single week after that, but it means that he can have the opportunity to show what he can do.
Yeah. On the podcast that me and DJ work for, okay, we've basically said if he doesn't start past week 9, he won't play at all. And we have said this is the perfect opportunity for him to play, because, you know, no Tua Tagovailoa, who has us for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every time he's played. I think he's 10-0 or 12-0 since he's played us. He's never lost to the Patriots. They're banged up. Phillips, their best edge rusher, is now out for a season-ending injury. But fans are scared because they're very scared because if Drake May does come in and go, this offensive line is terrible, he's going to get killed. He played without an offensive line in North Carolina. What's the fucking difference?
And I just think this is a great opportunity for him to be able to step up and show what he's worth. If that means that they go back to Jacoby Brissett next week, so be it. It doesn't really matter.
No. I'll stop you right there. If you're going to play May, you play him for the rest of the season. You do not try and bring, because then you're going to... Because you could potentially undo all that hard work you've done in the off-season, through training camp, through pre-season, and undo all that hard work in one game just to then take him off and not put him in again. That will also mess up his confidence as well. We've already screwed up one quarterback already after Brady. We don't need to do another one.
But I think if he managed to play well in that one game, I mean, you've then got to think your next game after that.
Bro, if he plays and he balls out and he puts like 30, 40 points on the board and throws 4 touchdowns, guess what? Play him all day long. I have no issues with that.
Obviously, if he does that. But what I'm saying is if he's only putting up like 15 points against 2 touchdowns, like... and throwing 2 interceptions.
We're averaging 13 points a game as it currently stands.
This isn't... This is the NFL we're talking about. This is a divisional matchup. This is a very... For all intents and purposes, an important game. You don't do what they do in college, and you don't bring him in. You know, like when you're 30 points.
Maybe you should start doing what they do in college. It's fun.
It's not you're not 45 points up against Appalachian State at the half.
Not at the moment, since they're flooded. But carry on.
It's just one of them. With that in mind, gentlemen, we've got a couple of things that we need to get out before we all go. We've got a couple of things to finish up in a minute. So with that on, this is the end of today's episode. Please stick around on our YouTube channel, because we do have a couple more bits over the weekend coming up. Pick'em stuff, and we've got an extra special little London thing for you coming up. So stick around. Appreciate you. Thank you, Karl. Thank you, Sam. We'll see you next week.